Okay, from other people's analysis, it seems the last game may have been less scary than I thought, but I don't know about that. I thought it looked really scary for Turdz. Um, it sounds like Turdz didn't think it was as scary, and Deli didn't think it was as close to winning as I did. I don't know, man. Uh, yeah, I don't know. All right, so interesting rock elements. A very important electric element that will make those 2986s mighty 31097s, but with the 109 facing the wall. Turd's first turn again. Yeah, Deli sent a message, love that lightning in 9. Yeah, that's going to be huge impact. It's going to be very funny when the game is decided. How could it. Alright, rather than look at the position, we should figure out how could it be that that element in 9 will win the game? It can't even flip any matchup. There's nothing it doesn't already take that it takes with that. I guess there's something it could fail to take, right? It could fail to take a 5 to the right from 5597 and 8 exactly. So if 5597 lands in 8 and 2986 now is still able to capture it rather than unable due to the E, we can all celebrate the huge impact of that. All right. I mean, the rock, of course, draws me to 1797 and 1. Can we just force everything to work? And then Delhi goes 7719 and 2, and I think we just feel sad, right? There's no reason to check this with any great depth. Okay, so how do we find a starter? Well, I kind of feel like Turds might just go 1797 and 2. We can't have every game on this rule set be 1797 and 2 as the starter. But if he liked it last game, surely it's more appealing this game, right? When there's no safety for his opponent in 1 or 3, it's still this like clunky beast that's annoying for both people to ever capture. I don't know. Eh, hard to tell. Starters are hard. I have no idea what I would do. Yeah. I mean, I'd probably be thinking like, how can I play a weak corner? Let's play like 8-3-7-8-1. No, I don't like that. We have the 1 and 2 facing up. How do you feel directionally? Turds is a 1 and 2 up, a 2 and 3 right, a 3 down, and yeah, so he's a lot better down and left, right? So if we could chuck something like, I don't know, 8-3-7-8-7. Maybe something like that? I don't know. Starters are hard. I don't feel good for Turds here. In general, same and plus should be understood as favoring second turn. Uh, Sometimes neutral, sometimes favoring. I would guess favoring here. But then there are going to be the occasional things where like you get the lightning in 1 or the rock in 9 but without the fire in 6 like we saw last game, and suddenly starting is amazing, right? There's this big swing on starters where it's either really hard to coordinate anything, right? So without plus wall, it's a lot harder to have a corner that you have well taken, right? Like with plus wall, say you have a 9-8 corner, there's a chance they don't have that 9-8 that 9 covered, right? And so there's a chance you can create real difficulties for your opponent, and you have oriented your hand to be able to capture back those high numbers that cannot be overpowered. But without plus wall, you never have like naturally built corner starters, which is part of the reason you see people move towards side starters, is that corner starters just don't have the same logic to them. At least strong corner starters, or even half strong. Medium and low corners can still make more sense, but it's unless you just happen to luck into the full safety, it is hard for those to work. So what are you left with? You're left with weak and medium corners. Medium corner is still very clunky to take here, especially with E. Um, like maybe something like 8-3-7-8-9 is just a good starter. Maybe, right? Put the pressure back on Delhi. Say, I can recapture this pretty easily if you want to take it. I don't mind. Let's roll. Maybe something like that is viable. I don't think that's so bad. Maybe that's what I'd go with. But a lot of people end up moving off corner starters immediately, which is what we've seen so far on this rule set, is side starters. Now, I am a known side starter disliker. But the thing about side starters is they kind of work in one of three ways. Way number one, you just have a ton of synergy with the numbers they have facing the walls and can play off that. That's clearly not the case here because there's no wall rules. So we're left with the two more standard ways. One is a defensive side starter. You play something with a high enough number facing 5 that it cannot be taken from 5, and you have a card that can recapture it in both 1 and 3. Here, it is very difficult with the kind of high clunky numbers. Most cards are 3 strong facing. To have it be easy to recapture from both 1 and 3. It's hard to build these defensive sides, and if you're going to do so, you probably need 2 cards with a 9 in the same direction, which neither player has in their hands. I guess Delial has 2 9s to the right, but they obviously do not work together for this. And you need the ease to come right, because if one of those 9s facing down is covered, suddenly it's not such a safe defensive side starter with safety next to it. So I think that's really clunky. So you're left with the most, I think, interesting type of side starter, the aggressive side starter. And we may see it here. The aggressive side starter, which Turdz was a little closer to last game, though didn't really do it either. Turdz just did like the clunky big number side starter. And it worked out, so who am I to complain? But you could imagine a starter in 2 or 6 that says 1 and 3 or 3 or 9 respectively, and we do see the same starter in 2. I'm going to send a message. Not every game in the semifinals should 1797 and 2 start, because we've now had 3 games over both our semifinals, and 1797 and 2 has been the starter every game. I did think there was a good chance of this, given that 1, Turdz liked it last game, when everything about it seemed worse, and 2, I didn't see anything jumping out at me as a clear alternative. So I'm going to send a message saying 17972 can't be the starter every game of the whole semis, like both semis. All right. So, okay. Sorry, I got distracted by messages, but we're back. But yeah, the other idea was to go in 2 or 6 because 1, 3, and 9 are weakened. And specifically, like, Deli doesn't have +1s there with relevant high numbers facing out. You can play an aggressive side starter, which says, I have created these 2 half-safe squares, and you, my dear opponent, cannot play safely in them. Maybe I can, maybe I can't, but the important part of an aggressive side is that your opponent cannot. Ideally, you can combine aggressive and defensive sides and have they cannot and you can, but most players play kind of defensive sides where they look for their own recaptures. But Yevon, along with some other players, have shown some really strong results playing just side starters that don't give the opponent comfortable plays next to them, and then you can force the action later. Right, the opponent plays something far away. Say you go 2, they go 9 or 7, whatever. Say 7, and you can figure out, okay, they really don't have 1. Can I go 3, forcing them to play 1? Or maybe they really don't have 3. Can I go 1, forcing them to play 3 because maybe stuff is set up such they can't go 4. There's various stuff where you can figure out how to force action because they never have comfort playing in those squares. So I would think of this more as an aggressive side. Like, Turdz obviously can recapture, but his recaptures are clunky and not going to be safe to outfacing stuff. And I'm going to pause the video for a sec. All right, we are back. think I was talking about side starters, but let's think about what Deli should actually do rather than just like wait for him to make a move and then go, what a strange move that was, or the like. Um, but this goddamn moth. All right, pausing again. It got away from me again. Travesty. All right, if you hear like a really loud clap or something at some point, I am murdering insects. That said, so my instinct is always start looking at 1 or 3, but 1 or 3 are kind of risky here, unless 9736 can't take you. So, when can 9736 not take us? Well, if we go in 1, 9736 and 4 gets comboed back. So my first instinct is maybe Deli should just play 5597 and 1, which is kind of what I thought last game. But last game, Deli had a better option, and he went with that. But this game, it might be worth trying out 1. It doesn't flip 2, and 2 being the big clunky beast it is going to be hard to flip at some point. So that's a real cost. But it seems to me that Turdz probably can't go 4. Because of not 55975, because you've already used it, because of 77195. And if Turdz can't go 4, Turdz is probably going to stick something in 3, and then you can think about either going in 6, taking 3, or going in 4. You have some L choices. So I think 1 is appealing. What else could you do? Well, you could go immediately for 4 or 6, setting stuff up. But usually the reason you do that is, let's say like you have only 1 of 1 or 3, but you only have the L in like, say you only have 1, not 3. You have a good move in 1, but not 3. But your L setup is in 6, not in 4. So if you went 1, 3, it's pretty uncomfortable to go 6 there because you lock in their card for them while your card in 1 is still potentially vulnerable. So if you have like a safety in 1 and a good move in 4, you usually go 1 then 4, right? But if you have 1 and 6, you usually want to go 6 first, obliging 3, and then you go 1, and 1 and 2 are safe because hopefully your move in 6 only gave you 5. And that way you actually have 5 rather than need to attack 5, and that's usually the sequencing you want to do there. Okay, Deli does go 1. He, however, does not feel he needs to go 1 with 5597. He holds on to 5597, but this, of course, gives Turdz a new option. Turdz can play 8378 and 4, which, for simplicity of thinking, I didn't want to allow. Obviously, like, there's a lot of thinking that goes kind of, what's the card that limits their options the most, and only calculating that. But better thinkers, like Deli, will spend time being like, okay, but I don't actually have to use 5597 and 1. Is there a card I want to use more there? And what's the trade-off on using it? But I'm uncomfortable with this trade-off. His idea is he's going to run Turdz out of left-facing value. If Turdz plays something like 8378 and 4, I think there's a good chance, not guaranteed, but a good chance that Deli's going to play 7971 and 7 and say, I've flipped 2. It was useful for me to flip 2. Now I don't have to flip it later, and it is hard for you to flip back. Your only card that does so is 7279. And that might be a card you need to be able to kind of take anything else to the left of you. That said, 8378, given that it already doesn't have the recapture in 3, seems perfectly fine to use in 4. So I would be expecting 8378 and 4 here. I think if you go 6, you've basically let Deli get away with this lower outfacing number. Sorry, if you go 3. If you go like 7279 and 3, now Deli has a very free choice between all kinds of L's. He has an attack against your card in 3. You used a card that was very valuable. He can go in 4, setting up threats in 5. Like, I think you're somewhat obliged to go 4. I would be pretty surprised here if 8378 and 4 wasn't played. Is there some huge setup against it I'm missing? 7719, no. 7971, no. 5597, no. 9736, no. You can set up 7 but not 5, but the important thing, if 4 is played and you go 8, the important thing is to set up 5, not 7, because for the defender, it's much safer feeling to block 7. And so you need the threat to be, if you take the safer square, I have big combo play. It's more important to set up, like, if a square is inherently valuable, it's less important to set up combos there, because going there is already good. What you're trying to do is make threats in as many squares as possible, not make threats all in one square where the opponent can block that square and you go, shit, plan foiled, but I had such a good one square, you know? And there's some similar stuff with card use too, right? Where, like, if all your hopes are on one card and they just force you to use that card, then either you are with a situation where you use that card and suddenly you have nothing for anywhere else, and so it needs to have just paid off massively, which if it's not the absolute end of the game, it maybe didn't do enough, good chance it didn't, or you start having to stick other cards in squares they really don't want to be in, and just having very little impact on the game. And so what you really want is, like, this card is for this pair of squares. This other card is for that pair of squares. This other card can do decent duty on any of those squares. Not great duty, but decent duty. And that way you should be able to find, like, a way to use any of your cards, right? If the paired squares are left open, you keep your cards that play for the paired squares and you use your kind of this is okay utility card. If one of the pairs is taken, hopefully you can play on the other of the paired squares with the card for those squares, right? And as a card is dwindling in use, right, when a card goes from having 2 squares that look good for it to down to only 1, that's when you use it before that becomes 0, right? And so what you really want is, hey, this card looks good in at least 2 squares, I can keep it in my hand. What if we tried to apply that thinking to this position? 7279 looks good in 3 for Turdz, and also, like, obviously it looks good in some of the lower squares, right? It has high numbers out facing, it's pretty relevant to that action. This is not a card that is about to run out of value. We don't have, like, a board where everything is diagonals and paired squares, but it has one clearly good square and a bunch of, like, yeah, it's probably going to find play. 9736 is facing up at the action. I'm a little uncomfortable with this whole 9736 thing, but it's pretty clearly going to have, like, squares facing the action. Same for 8378, though it doesn't have 3, right? 2986 is the card that you're worried about, but you're on second turn, so it's okay to have one card you're worried about. So I think you do go 8378 and 4. I think you just got to take that card in 1. You still have a threat in 3. And you still have your 9736 to cover anything Delial puts in 3. And you got to figure out what you're doing against 7971 in 7, but I think it's pretty much got to be played. And I think also, like, there's something to the opponent kind of tries to get away with something. They try to put out a lower number than they had to in the hopes of keeping better cards for later. If you don't punish it, like, you're either agreeing, yes, that was a better move, or, I mean, basically you're just granting that they made a better move. And sometimes they did, but this to me felt like something that could be attacked and should be attacked. Oh, and of course 7971 and 7 doesn't flip 4. That's really important. So 9736. Yeah, so what I meant to say earlier, which I said badly because I assumed 7971 could land in 7, because I finished my calculations and then I started talking, and by the time I got to my point talking, I had forgot my calculations, was what I actually was thinking was Deli might intend 9736 and 7, with the point that 7279 for Turdz can only land in 1 of 3 or 8. And so Deli, while he's not locking in anything there, one of 9736 and 7 or 1797 and 2 will be his. But I think Turdz could play around that pretty comfortably. I think this is another decent position for Turdz here. Like, Turdz still has the threat if Deli goes in 3 of going in 6 with 9736. This hasn't set up any combo potential against that. He has 7279, which covers 3. And if he can find a use for 2986, then he should be really happy. And he may be able to find a use. For instance, if Deli goes 7, probably the best card to block 5 with is going to be 2986. And suddenly he's going to have found reasonable play for all his cards. For Deli to have a good response to that, he kind of needs 9736 for 8, but that means he can't have used 9736 for 7, and maybe he doesn't need to, right? 2986 and 5 recaptures it anyway. So I think 7971 and 7 is the move we're going to end up seeing here. And I don't think this is too high risk for Deli, but I think this is like some caution is wanted here, right? Like if 7971 and 7, Turdz could go 5, but he could also like just go 7279 and 3 and grab another card. And say, yeah, I'm snagging another card. And I don't think, I mean, I think Deli has some things to check. I don't think any of it's too scary, right? I don't think this is the game we're going to get a decisive result. But I think a little more care is going to be needed from Deli's side this game. Which is kind of remarkable that after turn, like, we're going to be seeing turn 1, 2, both games, I have felt really favored towards Deli. And by turn 5, I think I'm going to be on Turd's side in both games so far. Right? Like, after Deli goes, I think it's going to be like, okay, Turdz can check a few things. They're probably not winning, but he's the one who gets to look for wins. And I think that's going to be true in both games. We'll see. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe 79717 is better than I think, and Deli is just very safely doing well after that. Very possible. But I don't know. Or maybe like 5597 and 3 just works great, right? And like this sequencing was really good from Deli, where it was really important for him to flip 2 before he blocked 3. Entirely possible. But, and I think this is like, I'm not saying like this is a massively Turd's favored game. I think this is looking like a relatively balanced game, but little advantage to Turdz. I've been wondering recently in a match, like, when you come in thinking one player is favorite, and this one I come in thinking Deli's favorite, but you see the other getting advantages or outplaying them. And I think given that Turdz is on first turn, and I'm very first turn skeptical, I think he's been doing really well. Do you change your estimation? But it would be kind of wild to change my estimation after a first game where Deli was never going to lose, played a move in 4 to be fancy, and was clearly pressing for a win after his first move and just didn't have one, I don't think. And a second game where I don't think Deli's actually going to be in trouble. Like, how much can that swing your evaluation? I don't know, but I'm certainly closer to 50-50 than I started out on the match. Like, if I started 60-40 Deli, I'm now like 58-42 Deli, which is a very small swing, but, you know, getting more Turdz curious. It is entirely possible that when Deli knows I'm watching, he makes moves purely to infuriate me. Given that he did put a message in the chat about how surely I was yelling about his move in 4. So I do think it is extremely plausible that when Deli knows he isn't winning, and especially when he knows I'm recording and will get pissed at him doing strange things, he will intentionally choose the stranger option that he knows works, right? Because I don't think he was taking on any risk by playing 4. I just wanted him to go for more pressure. Okay, so we see 9736. But this means 2986 and 5 is almost safe. So I think that's the thing to check first. Is 2986 and 5 any good? And I think the answer is it's just ties. But actually, no, there's some sneakiness. So 2986 and 5 makes it 5-5. If Deli goes 7-9, 7-1, and 8, what happens? Well, 9736 and 9 loses to 7719 and 6 because your 7279 takes nothing at the end. And if that loses, the whole position is kind of likely to be busted. If 9736 in 6, then you play. I guess that ties. Yeah, I guess that's a pretty straightforward tie. Yeah. Okay. But I think that might be the only tie. Because 9736 and 1 is met by 5597 and 6, and that wins for Deli. And if you start with 7279 and 9, he just takes it. 9736 is dead. 7279 and 6, Deli goes 9, you're dead. And 7279 and 3, Deli has the same in 6, and I think you're dead again. So I think 2986 and 5, 7971 and 8, from a position that I thought was favorable to Turdz. This is what I was talking about earlier. Suddenly, Turdz has exactly one tie, and it's a kind of clunky tie. And Deli's very good at doing that. He's very good at taking positions like on my kind of scale of 0 to 100, where I say like 50 is an even game, 75 is like halfway between a win and a tie, 100 is a win, 0 is a loss. Like, Deli takes positions I think are like 40s, right? Like, a bit bad, not that bad, but like things could definitely go wrong here. He takes like 40s and somehow finds ways where his opponent has one tie. And so, for instance, this position looks to me kind of like a 40, like a slight advantage Turdz, and then suddenly 29865. And I haven't even checked other things. There might be better for Deli, but like 7971 and 8, and suddenly Turdz has to have seen that 9736 and 6 holds to find a tie there. Yeah, kind of, 6 is the last square you check in those situations. So, a nice example of that. Turdz' other main, I think, attacking idea here is 7279 and 3. Now, Deli has a lot of legal moves there, and 2986 is not a card Turdz really wants in his hand after that. So I'm pretty skeptical that does anything. So I think Deli has held. Does Turdz have anything fun in 6? Can he play like 2986 and 6 and say, aha, I am getting a bad card out of my hand? I don't think so. I just don't think it does anything. Anything funky in 9? Can we see 2986 land in 9? The Dream? I don't think it does anything. One problem with the element in 3 is it means the 7279 never sweeps the right side. Yeah, I think Deli has very comfortably held this position, and in fact is making it look like he was better, not worse, which maybe he was. Maybe I misevaluated. Just has the right numbers everywhere. There are some games where you watch a player and they have the right numbers everywhere, and you're just like, I'm sure they didn't see that in advance. This is so frustrating. There's such a luck box. But Deli just has the right numbers because he did see it. It's not fair. It ain't right. Alright, so Turdz has picked up 7279, so I thought that was likely to land in 3. Could also land in 8. I didn't think about 7279 and 8 here. That's a very possible move. I don't know what it does, but it's legal. You can do it. Alright, he does play it in 3. Okay. So I think Delhi should have a lot of paths to the tie here now that 7 is safe. Um, I suspect one option is 7, 9, 7, 1, and 5, but we have to check it. If Turdz puts anything in 6, Delhi can play an 8 with a 7 to the right, and that will not be captured, even with the +1. Even with the +1. Even though the +1 would set up a same if elemental worked differently, right? There's another universe where 79715, 97366, 77198, where 2986 and 9 is the same. There is a world where that's the case. It's not our world, but there's a world. Like, FF8 could very easily have done that. They obviously didn't think through the implications of E, and they easily could have decided that was how same interacted with E. Um, that said, what else is there? So 6 doesn't win. Anything in 9? No way. There's just no setups. Anything in 8? Yes, and actually, wow, that does use the element. If 7, 9, 7, 1, and 5, 9, 7, 3, 6, and 8 makes it 6, 4, and 7, 7, 1, 9, and 6 is recaptured by 2, 9, 8, 6, and 9. So actually, that line to E does matter, and 7, 9, 7, 1, and 5 doesn't work. So my first idea doesn't work, and YouTube TV stops sending me ads. All right, so if we don't like that move in 5, is there anything else we could do in 5? We could play 5, 5, 9, 7 there, with the point that if Turdz plays anything in 6, we have 7, 7, 1, 9, and 8 still tying for the same reasons as before, but this time plussing 5. And I still am just going to assume nothing in 9 works because it will never work. And, but the danger is 8. After 7, 7, 1, 9, and 5, is there a problem in 8? Well, the thing is, if there's anything in 8, you always have 5, 5, 9. Sorry, what's my move in 5? 5, 5, 9, 7, and 5. 8 never flips anything. And then you have 7, 7, 1, 9, and 6. So 5, 5, 9, 7, and 5 should tie unless I'm completely deluded. There's also 6 to check. There's 8 to check. As I said, I bet there are ties everywhere, but the tie I believe in right now. So if I'm Delhi, I check 7, 9, 7, 1, and 5 first, and then I check 5, 5, 9, 7. And now I think 5, 5, 9, 7 is a tie, so I'm going to double check it just to make sure I know that is a tie that I will play if my other calculations look wrong, right? So I'm going to double check that because making sure I know that's a tie is more valuable than like checking some other line and then not being sure what the tie is. So 5, 5, 9, 7, and 5. If Turdz goes 9, it can't work. Just can't. For instance, 2, 9, 8, 6, and 9, it actually, there is a setup in 8, so we block 8 there. See, this time we're being a little more specific because I'm making sure it works. And 9, 7, 3, 6 does not recapture everything as long as we recapture 9 because it can't flip the +1 on 2, 9, 8, 6. See, elemental matters. So that is definitely a tie against that move, 2, 9, 8, 6, and 9. If 9, 7, 3, 6, and 9, then we can take our plus and 6, and we're good. Man, 2, 9, 8, 6, and 9 actually quite close to a win, though, for Turdz. It isn't, but very close. 6, we meet with 7, 7, 1, 9, and 8. Can they possibly have a plus there? They cannot. Even though, as I said, it's very close to a same if elemental is different. And if they go 8, we always have 7, 7, 1, 9, and 6, and we flip a lot of stuff back. Are they ever somehow plussing our 1? No, they are not. All right, so we've made sure 5, 5, 9, 7, and 5 works. Now we're free to look at whatever we want. So the next thing I do is I would look at 6 with both 7, 7, 1, 9 and 7, 9, 7, 1. Here's the thing, though. I'm not them, so I don't have to do it. So I'm going to be lazy about calculating now because calculating with E is a pain. but I am confident there is a tie, and I would then spend a little more time, but I wouldn't spend much time, right? Like, if I said 79716 and I looked at, say, 29865, right? Which is the first thing you'd look at, I'd be like, oh, I just lose immediately, right? I can't take that. I'm down 6-4. I lose. All right, 7971 and 6 is out. What about 7719 and 6? Well, we already saw 2986 could be a decent rejoinder of that to that. It doesn't flip 6 this time, but it's 5-5. Is there any chance I'm winning that position? No, I don't think so. So I don't need to look further because I have found a tie. So I would be very lazy about checking these lines in that, like, once I've found a tie, any move that doesn't have a chance to win, I can dismiss. Wait a second. I didn't think this worked. Oh, there's the same in 6. Right. I dismissed this because of 8, but there is the same in 6. Right. I dismissed this because of 9, 7, 3, 6, and 8 because I just calculated it really badly. But because I was so distracted by E, I forgot there was a same in 6, which I sometimes noticed and sometimes didn't. But this should also work, right? I just was dumb. Yeah, so I thought the problem was 9736 in 8 because that puts Turdz up 6-4, and so Deli must capture, and Deli's only capture in my head was 7719 and 9, which 2986 covers, or 7719 and 6, which in my head only captured one thing, but actually captures 3 things, which we could take back due to the element 2986. But of course, this ties easily, and I just cannot calculate at all. Shame on me and me alone, and I'm sure my 4 viewers watching this video were like, that definitely does tie, you idiot, there's a same. And you're correct, I am adult. It's so easy, like, it's one of the things that makes me, like, feel like just how hard this game might be for beginners. To keep track of so much, and then, like, same and plus and combo feel like these big additions to stuff that's already, like, taxing you a lot. That's just hard. And here, elemental means I just stop being able to notice sames and pluses. But yeah, this is a comfortable hold, and a more comfortable hold than the one I was suggesting. I'm gonna go check the Discord. Also burning out. God, this summer is summer. It's horrible. I hate summer. Absolute worst. Because I regularly play like a decent number of chess games online, I have like regular mental tabs on like my brain capacity, right? Of like, oh, I know I'm thinking well and my rating has gone up. And just when the heat waves hit, especially on days I'm like, I can get through this without air conditioner. I can spend a little while outside of my air conditioned rooms because we don't have central air here where I am in the summer. It's just, oh, you can just feel the rating going downhill. Well, that's cute, because Deli cannot take it from 8, so 8 is a tie. Yeah, that's a cute way to do it. Well done to Turdz. Full style marks, as Deli says. Yeah, that's cute. I didn't check that. Nicely done. I think pretty balanced game here. Yeah, and we have our second tie. And I'll end the video here. Apparently, Deli had sent a message. I hope Turdz plays that move in 9. And then Turdz played the move in 9. Deli sent it to someone else, who shall remain unnamed, but rhymes with Smuff. Never figure out who it was. So that's cool. Nice finish to the game. We'll end this video here. God, they'll keep going. God, recording videos on Deli games always takes forever. I'm going to turn on a fan. Let's test at the end of this video if the fan ruins the sound. You can't hear the fan. Oh, that's great. Now, I can't tell if you can't hear it because when I don't speak, the mic doesn't show up. But it's possible when I do speak, the fan then shows up with my speaking and ruins it. Huh. Well, if the next video is terrible, that is why.